Excuse me. What are you doing in my kitchen? That's what came out of my mouth, half shout, half shock. A stranger was standing by my stove, flipping eggs in my frying pan like it was Sunday morning in her house. She turned, startled but not scared. "Can I help you?" she asked, calm, polite. I froze in the doorway, suitcase still in hand, shoes crunching on a welcome mat that wasn't mine. "My house," I said quietly. "You're standing in my house." She frowned slightly, then smiled. "Your house? No, sir. We bought this place last week through the HOA. Through the HOA? My brain didn't even register the words. Behind her, a man was grilling burgers in my backyard, my grill, my patio, my home. The curtains were new, the furniture rearranged, and even the faint smell of the place was different. I shoved my key into the lock just to prove it didn't fit. Then she showed me a folder stamped, signed, perfectly legal looking, and right there, above the county seal, was my signature. Neat, perfect, forged. I stepped back, heart racing, realizing this wasn't a misunderstanding. This was theft. Someone had sold my house while I was gone, and the only person who had access to my spare key? The HOA president, Karen Layla Lewis, or as the neighbors called her, the Karen of Willow Creek. What I didn't know that day was that she wasn't just enforcing HOA rules, she was selling lives on paper. Police lights flashed across the porch. "Sir, calm down," the officer said, flipping through papers. "They've got legal documentation." Legal documentation? My home had been hijacked and they were talking about paperwork. Across from me stood Derek and Hannah Thompson, a polite couple in their mid-30s. They looked confused, not guilty, the kind of people who pay their taxes early. "We bought the house fair and square," Derek said softly. "The HOA president handled everything herself." There it was again. Karen Layla Lewis, late 40s, impeccably dressed. Pastel blazers, pearl earrings, and that fake smile she wore like a crown. She didn't manage the HOA, she ruled it. Fines for mailbox color. Citations for unapproved flowers. Everyone feared her clipboard. Everyone, except me. I called her right there, standing on the porch. She answered on the first ring. "Daniel," she said, her tone dripping with practiced charm. "So glad you're back. Is something wrong with your property?" "You sold my house," I said flatly. "Oh, Daniel," she laughed softly. "You signed the authorization before your trip. Power of attorney, remember?" "I never signed anything." A pause. Then, coldly, "Then someone did a very convincing job pretending to be you." Click. The line went dead. That's when I realized this wasn't a mix-up. This was premeditated, and I wasn't dealing with a neighbor. I was dealing with a professional manipulator. From that moment on, I stopped being her victim and started being her problem. By morning, I was sitting in the county records office, running on zero sleep. The clerk barely looked up when I said, "I need every document for 142 Willow Creek." She typed a few keys, frowned. "That's odd," she said. "All the files were transferred last week." "To whom?" I asked. She turned her screen slightly. There it was. Karen Layla Lewis, listed as the authorized sales agent. I walked out, my hands shaking. Opened my email on the phone. 4 new messages from the HOA, all dated while I was overseas. Each one polite, professional, and fake. Per your request, the property transfer has been confirmed. Attached is your digital signature. I hadn't sent a single one. Then I noticed the fine print. Every email came from a private HOA server, not the public one. And when I traced the IP, it pointed straight to the HOA office computer. I drove there, heart pounding. The blinds were shut, the door locked, and a sign taped up. Closed for internal audit. The parking lot was empty except for one car, a pale blue Lexus. Karen's. She was inside, watching, waiting. I turned around, took out my phone and recorded everything. The emails, the documents, the timestamps. If I couldn't get my house back today, I'd make sure she never kept it. But that night, when I checked the county records again, I saw something that froze my blood. My name listed as the seller. The HOA office sat at the edge of Willow Creek, tucked between a coffee shop and a dry cleaner. Harmless, ordinary. Until you looked closer. The blinds were always shut. The security camera above the door pointed outward, not inward. And taped across the glass was the same sign as before. Closed for internal audit. I parked across the street and waited. 10 minutes, 20. Then, a flicker of movement behind the blinds. Someone was inside. I crossed the road slowly, pretending to scroll through my phone. As I got closer, I heard it. Faint typing, a drawer closing, and the sharp click of heels on tile. Karen's heels. That same confident, calculated rhythm. I tried the door, locked. I knocked once. No answer. Karen, I called, forcing calm into my voice. We need to talk. The sound stopped. For a moment, everything was silent. Then her voice came muffled through the glass, smooth, deliberate. Daniel, you shouldn't be here. The board is reviewing your case. My case? I said, jaw tightening. You forged my signature. A pause, then laughter, low and sharp. Oh, Daniel. You really should check your emails before making accusations. I stepped closer. You think no one will find out what you're doing? Her shadow moved closer to the blinds. Find out? She whispered. They already believe me. The blinds snapped shut again. I stood there, fists clenched, heart pounding against my ribs. This wasn't just theft, it was theater. She was performing control in every scene. As I turned to leave, I noticed a paper stuck under the office door. A meeting notice. HOA emergency board session. Tomorrow, 8 p.m. If Karen wouldn't open the door for me, I'd find out what she was hiding. When she least expected it. The next morning, I walked into a small brick office downtown. Adams and Reed Law Firm. No marble floors. No fake smiles. Just paperwork, coffee, and focus. Behind the desk sat Kevin Adams, mid-40s, calm eyes, sleeves rolled up. He looked like someone who'd seen 100 people get chewed up by the system and wasn't impressed by any of it. He scanned the documents I'd brought, the emails, the forged deed, the authorization form. When he finally looked up, his voice was steady. Daniel, this isn't a misunderstanding. It's organized fraud, I leaned forward. You can prove that? He nodded. Yes, but first I need to know everything about your HOA president. I told him about Karen Layla Lewis, the fines, the control, the fake charm. He listened without interrupting, pen tapping softly. When I finished, he said 6 words that shifted the entire weight of the room. She sold your house to herself. I blinked. What? He pulled out the county ownership record. Her company, Willow Realty LLC, is listed as the buyer. Same initials, same address as the HOA office. For a moment, everything went silent. She hadn't just forged my signature. She'd created an entire company to funnel stolen homes through. Kevin leaned back. We'll start quietly. Let her think you're panicking. People like her make mistakes when they feel untouchable. I looked out the window at the courthouse across the street, the first place that suddenly felt like hope. Karen thought she'd written the ending to my story, but she'd just given me the pen back. And if she thought I'd play by her rules, she was about to find out I had a few of my own. 2 days later, I found her exactly where I expected, standing at the entrance of the Willow Creek Community Center, clipboard in hand, pretending to care about neighborhood beautification. Her posture was flawless, her tone sweet enough to rot teeth. Daniel, she said, smiling as if we were old friends. I heard about the confusion. You really shouldn't let gossip get to you. I didn't smile back. You forged my signature and sold my house. Her eyes didn't even flinch. That's a serious accusation. Maybe you're under stress after your trip? She stepped closer, lowering her voice. You've always been emotional, Daniel. You might want to take a break before this gets embarrassing. Gaslighting. Classic Karen. She used calm like a weapon, and she was good at it. I held up my phone, screen lit with the forged documents. These are county-verified records. Your company name, Willow Realty LLC. Care to explain why the HOA president also owns the buyer? That perfect smile twitched, just for a second. Then she laughed. You think you're the first person who's tried to threaten me with paperwork? The sound made my skin crawl. You've got 30 homeowners wrapped around your finger, I said. But you forgot one thing. I record everything. Her smile froze. You wouldn't dare. Oh, I already did. She stepped back, voice tight now. Careful, Daniel. Accusations like that can get you sued. Maybe, I said, leaning in, but I'm done being scared of you. I turned and walked away, feeling her stare burn between my shoulder blades. For the first time, she looked nervous, because the next thing she didn't know was that the law was already watching her every move. 2 nights later, my neighbor Steve Parker came back from his work trip. He'd been gone during the chaos, one of the few people in the neighborhood I actually trusted. When I told him what happened, he didn't say a word, just walked straight into his garage and pulled out a small hard drive. I've got motion cams facing your property, he said quietly. Might want to take a look before I erase the feed. We hooked it up in his living room. The footage was grainy but clear enough. And there she was, Karen Layla Lewis, standing on my porch in the middle of the night, gloves on, clipboard tucked under her arm. She used a spare key to open the door. 5 minutes later, a moving van pulled up. 2 men loaded boxes, my boxes labeled with my handwriting. I felt my jaw tighten. Pause that. Steve froze the frame. Karen turned toward the camera, her face half lit by the porch light, smiling, like she knew she was untouchable. Jesus, Steve whispered. You weren't kidding, I exhaled, the air sharp in my chest. This is it, I said. This is all we need. I sent the footage to Kevin, my attorney. His reply came fast. Keep everything secure. Do not confront her again. We're going to the fraud division. For the first time in weeks, I felt something that almost felt like relief. I wasn't crazy. I wasn't paranoid. I finally had proof. But relief doesn't last long when you're dealing with a woman like Karen, because power doesn't crumble quietly, it explodes. And the next explosion was about to rock the entire HOA. By the end of the week, the footage was in the hands of the county fraud division. Detective Ramirez, sharp-eyed and patient, met me and Kevin in a gray conference room that smelled like stale coffee and paper. He played the footage twice, silent, focused. Then he leaned back, pen tapping the table. She didn't even try to hide it, he said. That's arrogance, not carelessness. Kevin nodded. She's been doing this a long time. My client isn't her first victim. Ramirez flipped through the stack of files I'd collected. Most were HOA documents, maintenance budgets, community rules, and monthly fees. But buried inside was something different. Title transfer forms for 3 other homes, all approved by Karen's digital signature. He whistled softly. She's running a real estate ring under the HOA's nose. My throat went dry. You're saying she's done this before? 3 times that we know of, Ramirez said. Maybe more. All are listed under a company called Willow Realty LLC. Guess who owns it? I didn't answer. I didn't need to. Her name was printed right there in black ink. Karen Layla Lewis. It wasn't about my house anymore. It was about everyone she'd conned, fined, and bullied. Ramirez closed the folder. Here's what we'll do, he said. We move quietly. Let her think the world's still hers. Then when she slips, he snapped his fingers. We take her down, I nodded, adrenaline rising. For months, she'd treated my silence like surrender. Now silence was the weapon that would end her. Because the higher Karen built her empire, the louder it was going to crash. It happened 3 days later, completely by accident. Kevin called me early that morning, his voice tight. Daniel, she made a mistake. I sat up fast. What kind of mistake? He forwarded a voicemail that had been left on his firm's answering machine, an accidental call from Karen's office. The message started with background chatter, then her voice, unmistakable, sharp, impatient. Move the HOA files out before Ramirez gets here. I don't care how. Just make it look routine. Then a door slammed. Silence. End of message. She'd just admitted to tampering with evidence. And she'd done it on record. Kevin's voice came through again. This is it. We'll need to act fast, before she destroys the physical documents. Within hours, the county investigators got a search warrant. By sunset, Ramirez and his team were walking into the HOA office, badges flashing, gloves on. Karen was there. Perfect hair, perfect posture, pretending it was business as usual. She smiled at Ramirez. Detective, I hope you have a warrant. He handed it to her. We do. For a second, her mask cracked. Just a flicker, Fear or maybe rage. Then she straightened. "You're making a mistake," Ramirez nodded. "You already did." They boxed every file, every hard drive, every sticky note on her desk. And as I stood outside watching from my truck, the lights flickering inside her little empire, I realized something. Karen didn't lose control. She never had it in the first place. But she wasn't done fighting yet, and her next move would drag the entire HOA down with her. The HOA meeting that night was packed. Homeowners, board members, neighbors whispering in the back rows. Word had already spread that something big was happening. Karen stood at the podium like nothing was wrong. Pastel blazer sharp, pearls gleaming under the fluorescent lights. "Before we begin," she said with that same practiced calm, "I'd like to remind everyone that gossip damages our community spirit." I sat in the second row, arms crossed, waiting. Behind me, someone whispered, "Is it true? Did she really sell houses?" Karen continued, flipping through her papers. "I know there's been confusion regarding recent transactions." The doors burst open. Detective Ramirez walked in with 2 deputies, badges flashing, eyes locked on her. The entire room went silent. Karen froze mid-sentence. "What is the meaning of this?" she demanded. Ramirez's voice was steady. "Karen Layla Lewis, you're under arrest for property fraud, forgery, and embezzlement." Gasps rippled through the room. Karen's clipboard slipped from her hands, papers scattering like broken wings across the floor. "This is outrageous!" she shouted. "You have no proof." Ramirez held up a small recorder. "Actually, we do. You left it on our voicemail." The room erupted, phones out, whispers turning to shouts. The same neighbors who once feared her now watched in disbelief as she was handcuffed in front of everyone she'd controlled for years. As the deputies led her out, she turned her head toward me. Her voice dropped low, venomous. "This isn't over, Daniel. I didn't move. It is for you." The doors closed behind her. For the first time, Willow Creek went silent, not in fear, but in relief. But even after she was gone, her mess wasn't, and cleaning it up would test every ounce of strength I had left. The trial began 6 weeks later. By then, every homeowner in Willow Creek had heard the truth, and everyone had a story about the woman who'd terrorized them behind HOA rules. The courtroom was packed. Karen sat at the defense table, posture perfect as always, like she still thought she could charm her way out of this. But her eyes, those calm, cold eyes, were different now. Tired, cornered. Kevin walked me through my testimony. Every document, every email, every forged signature appeared on the big screen behind us. When the video played, the footage of Karen using my spare key in the dead of night, a murmur rippled through the crowd. Karen leaned over to her lawyer, whispering furiously, but it didn't matter. The evidence was a storm, and she was standing in the middle of it with no umbrella. When my turn on the stand ended, I looked at her, really looked at her, and for the first time, I didn't feel anger, just pity, because control had been her only identity, and without it, she was nothing. The verdict came quickly, guilty on all counts. Property fraud, forgery, embezzlement. As the bailiff moved to cuff her, she turned toward me, her voice low, shaking with rage. "You think you won, Daniel?" I met her stare. "No, I just stopped losing." The sound of the cuffs closing echoed through the courtroom, sharp, final. For the first time in months, I could finally breathe. But justice doesn't rebuild what was broken. It only clears the ground. And I still had a home to reclaim. The house didn't look the same when I got it back. The walls were stripped, the furniture gone, the garden half dead. It felt hollow, not just the rooms, but me too. Like Karen hadn't just stolen property. She'd stolen peace. For a long moment, I stood in the doorway, sunlight cutting across the dusty floorboards. It didn't feel like home, not yet. But it was mine again. A knock came from behind me. It was Steve holding 2 cups of coffee. "Looks like you've got some work ahead," he said with a grin. "Yeah," I smiled faintly. "Guess it's time to start over." He set the coffee down. "You know, a lot of us—" "We're sorry. We all let her push us around," I nodded. "She built her power on fear. We just forgot we didn't owe her any." Over the next few weeks, neighbors started showing up. One brought paint, Another helped fix the fence, and someone even planted flowers out front. Willow Creek started to feel alive again. No more threats. No more fines taped to doors. Just people, real neighbors, helping each other out. By the end of that month, I stood on my porch, fresh coat of blue on the walls, coffee steaming in my hand. Same house. New beginning. I'd lost almost everything. Money, time, trust. But I'd gained something I didn't expect. Clarity. Power doesn't corrupt because people have it. It corrupts when no one stands up to it. And I wasn't done standing. Because what came next would change Willow Creek forever. Six months later, the HOA held its first election since Karen's arrest. For the first time, no one looked nervous. No one whispered. No one glanced at the door, waiting for her to walk in. The community center was packed the same room where she'd been taken away in handcuffs. Now it was filled with something new, hope. When nominations opened, I hadn't planned to speak. But then Steve stood up and said, "I nominate Daniel Hayes, the man who reminded us this neighborhood belongs to its people." The room went quiet. Then applause rippled through like a wave. I didn't want the title, but I couldn't ignore what it meant, so I said yes. As president, I tore up half the old rules, the petty fines, the power trips, the violations written just to scare people. We opened the books, made every decision public. No secrets. No hidden fees. Not because of authority, but because people finally trusted it again. I watched Willow Creek change. Kids played on lawns without parents checking the clock for rule hours. Neighbors actually talked. The silence that once came from fear now came from peace. One evening, I walked past the community sign, the one Karen had installed with her name at the bottom. The new plaque was simple. For the people who built this place, not the ones who tried to own it. I smiled. Karen Layla Lewis was serving time now, convicted, forgotten. But her story stayed with us as a reminder. Power without accountability will always find a way to disguise itself, and sometimes the only way to fight corruption is to outlast it. I looked back at my home, freshly painted, porch lights warm against the dusk, and felt something I hadn't in a long time. Peace. If this story made you believe in standing your ground, hit like, share it forward, and subscribe. Because sometimes one voice is all it takes to change everything. Soft instrumental fade camera pulls away from Daniel's porch as the neighborhood lights come on one by one.